Now, patients didn't know about the deception or anything with Ghosh, which is similar to J. Marion Sims. Some of these individuals were just truly seeking help and was trying to figure out what was going on with them and did not understand that they were being deceived because they were convinced, I'm going to board you, I'm going to feed you, we're going to take care of you, and we're going to make sure everything's okay, not knowing what real pain they were going to be going through. And then lastly, how Mona Ghosh is definitely giving J. Marion Sim vibes is because Snyder says many of the patients were lower income women of color. So the actual attorney that's representing these women, most of them were lower income women of color. Why are y'all always doing stuff to women of color? Why is there so much experimentation on people of color over the years?
They been cramping my style all week. Craving chocolate treats, checking pants, checking seeds, sipping herbal tea, and fight for menstrual equity. Hey, I kick Cramp's ass. Kick Cramp's ass. Kick Cramp, hey. 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 You're now tuned in to the Kick Cramp's Ass podcast with your host, Brittany Walker, advocating for menstrual equity, period poverty, and womb wellness. New episodes on Menstruation Mondays.
Happy Menstruation Monday. Welcome back to the Kick Cramp's Ass podcast, where I'm your host, Brittany Walker, but I go by B. And today we would like to reveal history is repeating itself as we approach Juneteenth, which is on June 19th. Now we will discuss Dr. Mona Ghosh, who was sentenced to 10 years of prison and to pay back $1.5 million back to several health insurance companies for lying to them and their patients, sometimes telling the patients that they needed aggressive treatments for cancer, but none of the women did not have cancer. Now, this is given Dr. J. Marion Sims, aka the father of gynecology, also a former slave owner, vibes. Now, he is known for unethically experimenting on and physically abusing enslaved Black women. Now, does this make Mona Ghosh the modern or the new J. Marion Sims? Let's get into it. Now, you know we like to kick off each episode with the I am power statement. I representing inspiration, A representing affirmations, and M representing manifestations. And today's I am power statement is I am in tune with my intuition, which guides me towards what my body, womb, and mind need. Therefore, I am willing to seek alternative recommendations if I feel unsafe with my health care professionals. Ashe. We also like to give a quote of the day, and today's is listen to your inner voice. Trust your intuition. It is important to have the courage to trust yourself. And that's by Don Ostroff. Now, if you feel uneasy or do not agree with your health professional, listen to your intuition. Paying attention to that small voice within will tell you everything that you need to know. There is nothing wrong with seeking a second or even multiple opinions for your sanity and to protect your body. All right, guys. Now we're going to go ahead and take a quick sip of our good old Cramp elixir, and we're going to cut to a commercial break, and we will be right back with you. Have you tried our bestseller, the Cramp Elixir? It's our herbal tea blend designed to reduce and eliminate menstrual cramps, PMS symptoms, and other uterine health issues that are hindering your day-to-day progress. Our elixir may decrease inflammation, reduce stress and anxiety, regulate blood flow, balance your mood, and it can kick cramps' ass. It includes a variety of herbs including hibiscus, red raspberry leaf, calendula, motherwort, ashwagandha, plus more. Head over to kickcrampsass.org and grab yours today. Now, back to the show. Welcome back from that commercial break. We hope that you enjoyed it. Now, who exactly is Dr. J. Marion Sims? Some of you may be unaware of who this individual is, but he was a 19th century American physician whose work is highly controversial and is widely considered unethical due to the horrific experiments he conducted on enslaved Black women, girls, and children. Now, between 1845 and 1849, Sims repeatedly performed painful experimental surgeries on women donated from a local plantation like Anarcha, Lucy, and Betsy, who we'll talk about a little more later, who were held in bondage and thus unable to give informed consent. That's giving Mad Dexter vibes if you guys have ever seen that show when he would tie his victims down to the table. Now, these procedures were done without anesthesia, despite its growing availability, as Sims held the misguided and racial belief that Black people experience pain differently than white people. His advancements came at the immense cost of profound suffering and exploitation, making his work a stark reminder of the unethical practices rooted in slavery and racial discrimination within the medical history. Now, Sims was also a slave owner who bought and raised slaves for the express purpose of using them for experimentation. He also used free persons of color to further carry out his work. After much pushback on speculation on his painful experiments due to the consistently screaming from agony, Sims started doping his patients up with morphine as he imprisoned them for months and even years to finish his work. Now, the morphine may have eased the surgery, but it did not alleviate the pain. As you could see, all these different studies just showcase what all J. Marion Sims did to enslave Black women and children. Now, let's take it a step further. You might have heard of us talk about J. Marion Sims before in past podcast episodes. We talked about him because one of our favorite books, Medical Apartheid by Harriet A. Washington, talks about all different types of dark history of medical experimentation on Black Americans from colonial times to present. And she has so much information in this book in regards to J. Marion Sims. I'm just going to read a few excerpts. We're going to throw them on this screen so you can see what we're reading, just so you can get a heads up on what was really going down back in the 1800s. Page 62 of this book, I'm going to read the last paragraph. As a plantation doctor, Sims attended many children, but he used only the Black infants as subjects for dangerous experiments in tetanus, a long misunderstood children's neuromuscular disease characterized by convulsions and muscle spasms. The tetany that was epidemic among enslaved children was actually the result of severe calcium, magnesium, and vitamin D deficiency caused by chronic malnutrition. But Sims was erroneously convinced that it was caused by the displacement of skull bones during birth. He took a sick Black baby from its mother, made incisions in its scalp, then wielded a cobbler's tool to pry the skull bones into new positions. He did this to a baby without anesthesia, without any type of pain relief or anything. So that's just letting you know what we're starting off with, the infamous J. Marion Sims. Now, fast forward to that same paragraph. This premature closing of the Black skull was held to cause low intelligence and perpetual childishness in adult Blacks. When the infants died, Sims castigated the sloth and ignorance of their mothers and the Black midwives who attended them. So not that he took accountability or responsibility, but he was blaming it on the mothers and the midwives that were attending to these mothers. Okay, so that sounds very familiar, guys. So let's go ahead and jump to another section in this book that I would like to highlight. Okay, on page 65, the surgeries themselves were terribly painful. Not only had Sims to close the unnatural openings in the ravaged vaginal tissues, he had to make the edges of these openings knit together. He opted to abrade or scarify the edges of the vaginal tears every time he attempted to repair an opening. He then closed them with sutures and saw them become infected and reopen painfully every time. Several male doctors had initially assisted Sims by holding down the enslaved women as he made incisions, but within a year they could bear neither the bone-chilling shrieks of the women nor the lack of progress any longer. The doctors left, leaving the women to take turns restraining one another. So, Dr. Sims actually had other doctors helping him tend to these women that were not given anesthesia, any type of pain relief, and was actually experimenting on these individuals, guys. We're talking about hysterectomies, all right? We're talking about very painful procedures that was only being done on Black women and not his white counterparts. It even states here that doctors were helping him and they had to stop because they couldn't deal with all the screams and the shrieks from the women. So then Dr. Sims started making the other Black enslaved women that he was going to be experimenting on later hold down the current women that he was experimenting on. Now that sounds very, very unethical. Very, very unethical. It even says further down on this page, Sims' refusal to administer ether seems even less defensible in light of his willingness to administer it very freely to another group of women without apparent regard for its trouble and risk. So again, just confirmation that you didn't want to do it on women that were not enslaved Black women. All right, guys. Now we're going to go ahead and head over to page 66 and we're going to wrap up. Now, Sims' writings often utilize imprisonment as a metaphor for the control that he saw as key to restoring a woman's health. His enslaved experimental subjects were the ultimate uncontrollable patients, and he eventually chose to control his slaves' pain in a peculiar manner. He addicted the slave women to morphine, but he gave it to them some form of opium in as large doses as can be borne at least twice in 24 hours, only after surgery, administering it for several weeks each time. I have to shake my head at that. But yet we're calling this man the father of gynecology. The morphine did ease recovery, but it did not allay the pain of the procedure itself. So this practice perplexed some of Sims' contemporaries. So he had other doctors looking at him upside his head like, what are you doing? This is unethical. This is not right. Let's talk about Anarcha, which we mentioned earlier in the opening of this episode. On a day in June in 1845, 17-year-old Anarcha, a slave on the Westcott plantation just outside of Montgomery, Alabama, felt the contractions that herald the birth of her first child. 3 days later, the exhausted, terrified girl still writhed in excruciating labor. Sims was called in to do a surgery that he'd had little experience in. The child ended up dying, and although Anarcha seemed out of immediate danger, she soon faced another horrible trial. Her torn vagina began eroding, and she was left with openings between the remains of her vagina and her bladder and rectum. She was now incontinent, and the incessantly flowing urine inflamed her ravaged tissues, triggering pain, recurring infections, and odor. Anarcha was far from alone in her misery. Her condition, vesico-vaginal fistula, afflicted many women, Black and white, who survived difficult childbirth. However, enslaved women had an especially high rate of this complication. Now, this made birth difficult, especially in the underdeveloped pelvises of very young women. Enslaved women became mothers approximately 3 years earlier than did white women. Now, Sims knew that curing it would make his medical fortune, and he also knew that using white women to test such painful surgeries as might be effective against it if it was impossible. Slaves did not have to be recruited, persuaded, and cajoled to endure pain and indignity they could not refuse. So again, working on individuals, trying to get his medical fortune up by experimenting on individuals that did not have a say-so. So as we can see, just to give you some background of who J. Marion Sims is, they have people who will argue his legacy because they feel like anesthesia wasn't prevalent then. It was just being discovered. It was just in a growing state out of Boston. But he was in Birmingham, Alabama, on a plantation and was widely known around the nation. So why couldn't he have went to Boston or connected with some of those individuals to possibly get anesthesia? He didn't care because he really felt like Black people could sustain pain differently than his white counterparts. All right, guys. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. I know that was a lot of information to take in, but when we come back, we're definitely going to get into Mana Ghosh. Tired of clunky remote recordings? Level up with Riverside FM Pro. Get studio quality audio and video, effortless editing with powerful AI tools, and seamless live streaming and collaboration. Become a pro of Riverside.fm and unlock the full potential of your content. Sign up today and make your voice heard. Visit the link in the description of this episode to discover more. Now, back to the show. Welcome back from that commercial break. We hope that you enjoyed it. Now, is Mona Ghosh the next J. Marion Sims? I'm going to actually read an article that was released on Tuesday, June 10th, 2025, so a little less than a week ago. And I'm going to read the article in full, and then we're going to get into, can we compare Mona Ghosh to J. Marion Sims? Now, the title of this article is Ex-Hoffman Estates OBGYN Sentenced for Health Care Fraud Accused of Unnecessary Procedures. Mona Ghosh accused of telling patients they needed aggressive treatments for cancer, but the women did not have cancer. And this is from ABC 7 Eyewitness News in Chicago, Illinois. Now, a legal ordeal for dozens of suburban women came to an end Monday as their former doctor was sentenced to prison after admitting to healthcare fraud. And when we say Monday, we're referring to June 9th, 2025. They were former patients of a suburban doctor who was sentenced for lying to health insurance companies and her patients, sometimes telling the patients they needed aggressive treatments for cancer, but the women did not have cancer. Some women preferred to only use a first name. I'm glad that she's going to prison for what she did because she deserves to go to prison, Angela said. She has altered lives indefinitely. It's something you can't take back. 10 years is such a small time, Socorro Urbano said. OBGYN Mona Ghosh was sentenced to 10 years in prison in order to pay back $1.5 million to several health insurance companies. Federal Judge Franklin Valderrama at the Deerskin Federal Building told Ghosh, "You irrevocably harmed women who put their trust in you. You used your patients to bankroll your luxurious lifestyle." Ghosh's practice was in Hoffman Estates, but closed after the FBI began looking into her billing. At a hearing last month, some of her former patients read victim impact statements about having unnecessary invasive procedures that sometimes led to infertility. Not just me, but everyone she took that right away from. I wasn't done having kids and she took it from me, Katie Hart said. At least she'll be in prison and I will be living free. She could no longer harm anybody, and that the main thing to do no more harm to any more of these women, Christie said. Horrific, absolutely horrific, attorney Adam Snyder said. Snyder represents nearly 100 of Ghosh's former patients and says that there are likely more who may have not known about the deception. Snyder says many of the patients were lower income women of color. She took the fertility of women for them to trust healthcare. The ability of women to develop families of their own, she took that, Snyder said. Ghosh is ordered to surrender her medical license and reports to the Federal Bureau of Prisons in September. She did not comment leaving court. Civil lawsuits are now being filed against Ghosh to get restitution to her former patients. So we're just going to sit and let all that resonate for a second. But as we do so, this is definitely giving J. Marion Sim vibes. You want to know how? She irrevocably harmed women who put their trust in her. Like many of the enslaved individuals that Marion Sims was experimenting on, some of these individuals were older, they were having issues on the plantation, they were having issues once they got pregnant, and they put their trust in this individual because that was the only doctor given to them. Now, Dr. Mona Ghosh, she used her patients to bankroll her luxurious lifestyle. Now, although this may not be Sam's exact case, he was honored with a legacy as the father of gynecology and given praise for his worth with all the excruciating pain he put so many enslaved Black individuals through. Some of her former patients read victim impact statements about having unnecessary invasive procedures that sometimes led to infertility. This is what Dr. J. Marion Sims was doing. This is definitely giving J. Marion Sims vibes because of all the different procedures he did on the enslaved Black women and girls. He did hysterectomies, vesicovaginal fistulas, and additional experiments that didn't even have to do with the womb. All right, guys. Now, of course, once you have a hysterectomy, you can't reproduce. So it was really daunting to me to know that he was performing hysterectomies back then, but a lot of the plantation owners wanted to continuously reproduce so they can have more slaves. So it just wasn't making sense what Dr. J. Marion Sims or what Mona Ghosh was doing. Now, patients were unknown to what was going on. They didn't know about the deception or anything with Ghosh, which is similar to J. Marion Sims. Some of these individuals were just truly seeking help and was trying to figure out what was going on with them and did not understand that they were being deceived because they were convinced, I'm gonna board you, I'm gonna feed you, we're gonna take care of you, and we're gonna make sure everything's okay, not knowing what real pain they were going to be going through. And then lastly, how Mona Ghosh is definitely given J. Marion Sim vibes is because Snyder says many of the patients were lower income women of color. So the actual attorney that's representing these women, most of them were lower income women of color. Why are y'all always doing stuff to women of color? Why is there so much experimentation on people of color over the years? So let's go ahead and get into the history of medical experimentation on Black women. Now, the history of medical experimentation on Black women is a deeply troubling and extensive one rooted in systematic racism, the dehumanization of Black bodies, and a fundamental disregard for consent and well-being. So let's go ahead and list some additional instances. Now, we just got off of the J. Marion Sims experimenting gynecologically, right? But let's go ahead and talk about some other instances that happened. So medical exploitation during slavery. Now, beyond Sims, enslaved Black women were routinely subjected to various forms of medical experimentation and exploitation. Their bodies were seen as clinical material for medical advancements, and physicians often colluded with slave owners, performing risky procedures that would have been deemed unacceptable for white patients. Now, this includes experimenting with OBGYN type procedures. So some doctors were even doing cesarean or C-sections on enslaved women without any anesthesia. We also have posthumous exploitation. While not exclusively in the United States, the case of Sarah Bartman, a South African woman, exemplifies the colonial medical gaze that fetishized and dehumanized Black women's bodies. Exhibited as a freak show attraction in the 19th century Europe, her body was subjected to scientific dissection and display even after her death, contributing to racial typologies. So because this individual was considered voluptuous and had hips and booty and thighs and what they might call thick nowadays, that was foreign to some of the white doctors in that time. So they literally exploited this individual, and there's even history on being sexually abused, sexually exploited as well. Now let's talk about forced sterilization and eugenics. And this was in the early 20th century and even to present day. Now, in the 20th century, eugenics movements in the United States led to widespread forced sterilization of marginalized populations, disproportionately targeting Black women as well as Indigenous and the Latino women. These sterilizations, often performed without informed consent or under duress, were justified by false beliefs about intelligence, fitness, and undesirability of certain racial groups. Activists like Fannie Lou Hamer brought attention to practices like the Mississippi appendectomy, where Black women would receive hysterectomies without their knowledge or consent. As you guys can see, we have a repeat in history on what's being done to Black women to sterilize us. And also, why are we so susceptible to pain? Why do people believe that we can take pain differently than any other race or ethnic group? Now, another time in history is Henrietta Lacks and the HeLa cells in 1951. Henrietta Lacks, a Black woman seeking treatment for cervical cancer at Johns Hopkins Hospital, had her cells taken without her knowledge or consent. These cells, known as HeLa cells, proved to be immortal and became an invaluable tool for countless medical and scientific breakthroughs, including the polio vaccine, chemotherapy, and gene mapping. For decades, her family remained unaware and uncompensated for the immense contributions of her cells, highlighting a continued pattern of exploitation and lack of autonomy for Black individuals in medical research. God, they were stealing her genes and her cells. And you hear about individuals getting melanin cells placement therapy, and it's like, for a country that really truly dislikes people of color, y'all sure want to be in our skin. Y'all sure want to get your face look like us. You sure want to have our melanin. You want to have that creativity. You want to have things that a Black person can embody, but yet you hate us and put us down. It just is ridiculous at this point. Now, the last experimentation that I'm going to mention today with history of Black women is the Tuskegee syphilis study's impact on Black women from 1932 to 1972. Although this study did also include men, we're just talking about our Black women today because of light of today's subject with Mona Ghosh and J. Marion Sims. While primarily focused on Black men, the infamous Tuskegee syphilis study where Black men were deliberately left untreated for syphilis to observe the disease's progression also had a direct impact on Black women. Wives and partners of the men in the study unknowingly contracted syphilis and often gave birth to children with congenital syphilis, demonstrating the ripple effect of medical neglect and deception within Black communities. This grim history has profoundly shaped the persistence of mistrust of medical institutions within Black communities and contributes significantly to ongoing health disparities. Acknowledging and understanding these historical injustices is crucial for addressing contemporary issues of racial inequality and inequity in healthcare. Guys, we're going to go ahead and cut to a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with you. Periods got you down? Kick cramps to the curb with Pilates for periods. Our online program combines targeted Pilates, soothing yoga, calming meditation, and breathwork to help you manage your menstrual cycle naturally. Feel stronger, calmer, and more in control. Reclaim your comfort. Visit Pilates for Periods YouTube page linked in the description of this episode and start your journey to a more manageable cycle today. Now, back to the show. Welcome back from that commercial break. We hope that you guys enjoyed it. Now, let's get into the news, events, and resources. All right, guys, so we are getting ready to go into our summer sabbatical, and we're going to be shutting down for 2 weeks. So we will reopen on Monday, July 7, 2025, where we'll be launching our next podcast episode on that day. So in 2 weeks, we will launch our next podcast episode, and the business will be closed down as well. So in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and send you over to our website and all of our different resources to help you continue improve your wellness and your menstrual cycle journey. We have our resource center that's on our website that houses a plethora of different resources to assist you with your menstrual cycle journey, from recipes to womb terminology and even additional research. This resource center can be very beneficial for you in right of the palm of your hand from a mobile device. We also have our Pilates for Periods, which is our fitness and mindfulness program, available on YouTube, offering yoga, Pilates, meditation, and breath work for you. All right, guys. We also have KCA the Magazine, our online digital platform. If you're more into reading articles and discovering more resource and guidance for your menstrual cycle journey, this is the place for you. And then don't hesitate to sign up for our newsletter through our website. Not only would you get a 15% off discount coupon to use at our KCA store on your first order, but you also will have access to the latest news, events, and resources that we have going on. All right, guys. So we are still accepting listeners' mail. Feel free to comment to this episode, or if you would like a more intimate and personalized experience, feel free to email us at contact@kickcrampsass.org, which will be listed in the description of this episode. But to recap, we want to wrap up with this Mona Ghosh, aka the modern J Marion Sims episode. We want to shed light on the unethical practices that have been practiced on Black women for centuries. Now, guys, we're approaching Juneteenth and we're still being experimented on. That is what's so crazy. Now, although Black people have been free in this country since 1865, they have still been manipulated, abused, and experimented on for the sake of others' gain. As we approach Juneteenth, we want to pay homage to all the forgotten women and children of gynecology and those who were harmed, mutilated, and killed. And we also want to send homage to the Black men who were experimented on as well. We also send condolences to those who have suffered from Mona Ghosh's actions and hope that those who are aware of the deception are notified of their situation. Be sure to like the podcast. Please share this episode with anyone who you think might benefit. And let's continue to champion open conversations about menstrual health and how we can stay empowered. Subscribe not only to our website, but our YouTube pages at Kick Cramps Ass and at Pilates for Periods, listed in the description of this episode. We want to send gratitude out to all of you for tuning in on this good old Menstruation Monday. And we manifest a positive, productive, and peaceful remainder of your day and menstrual cycle journey ahead. And we will be speaking to you in 2 weeks on Monday, July 7th. Peace.